Everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. The Lakers bring back Jaxson Hayes for one more year. Are they done with free agency? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter how or where you get your podcast, this one's always free, never behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 35,000 subscribers to the channel, Andy, all of whom are wondering if Thursday's move, re-signing Jaxson Hayes, means that the Lakers, at least for the free agent portion of the 2025 offseason, have done all that they're going to do, but we will break that down momentarily. Want to let everybody know first that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. I've certainly been clear that I would have been happy if the Lakers perhaps had upgraded the backup center position over Jaxson Hayes, or brought back Hayes really as a third center. As you remind me for Thursday's show, Maxi Kleber is still here.
Yes. I mean, Jaxson Hayes may be, you may have gotten everything that you wanted where Jaxson Hayes is the third string center on this team, because for the time being, based on JJ Redick's willingness to play Maxi Kleber in crunch time of an elimination game in the playoffs, despite maybe having met half of his teammates before that game, I'm guessing Kleber's ahead of Hayes in the rotation.
He could be, and they different skill sets. There's no question. But that said,
one of them is JJ likes him, and the other one is JJ doesn't.
You know, which one of them played most recently in the playoffs?
That it was still one of the more galaxy brain things I have ever seen.
I gotta be honest with you, I'm still on board with that first run. I don't think I would have gone back. Don't think I would have gone back the second time.
Crunch time of an elimination game. Maxi has yet to practice with these guys. No pressure. We just need you to save our season.
Right. Just give us some really good high leverage. Again, second run, not what I would have done. Anyway, that said, it did always kind of feel, speaking of inevitable, that the Lakers would, in fact, bring back Jaxson Hayes. I felt like there was always a better chance than not that the Lakers would bring him back, and that is, in fact, exactly what has happened. The Lakers agreeing to Jaxson Hayes for a one-year deal that, while terms weren't released, I think we can all assume is for the minimum. And
actually, according to Kobe Price, covers the Lakers for the SoCal News Group, friend of the show, it is for a slight bump over the veterans minimum from his last deal. I think just because it's
you have to,
right? It's a rollover from the last deal, so it's about $3 million, but it doesn't count at all against the biannual exception or anything like that. Interesting quirk, because it is Jaxson Hayes's third one-year contract with the Lakers consecutive. He now has a de facto no trade clause, essentially as a way of maintaining his own bird rights. Some old heads may remember when Devin George was a member of the Dallas Mavericks, same type of setup, and the Mavericks wanted to trade for Jason Kidd and include Devin George. Devin George did not want to go to the then New Jersey Nets, which were an absolute tire fire, and vetoed the trade. Then they eventually worked it out. So I think they traded somebody else and Devin stayed in Dallas or something like that. But it's rare when something like this happens. It's even more rare that one team will have two players with a no trade clause. As I said before, there's a part, we're going to get into the LeBron relationship with the Lakers. There's been some reporting suggesting that maybe a trade, while not inevitable or imminent, is more possible than some close to the situation would have believed before close reporting the situation, I should say. I tweeted out, there's a part of me at Cam Brothers, I kind of want LeBron at some point to ask out just as a degree of difficulty challenge to Rob Pelinka to see if he can manage to work out a deal involving both LeBron and Jaxson Hayes and both of their no trade clauses at the same time. Like, you should win exec of the year if you can actually figure out a way to come up with a trade where two players can veto it. That would be amazing.
I just love the idea of Jaxson Hayes dictating his destination. Like, as if there are like that many, like if LeBron, like we'll get to it later. We'll get back to Jaxson Hayes in a second. But like if LeBron was bought out, for example, like he would only want to go to certain teams. Every team would kick the tires at LeBron James on a minimum, basically. Like everybody, like, hey, you want to come to Jackson? The market would be less robust. I think it is. But like it always felt like they were going to bring him back because as a second center, certainly as a third center, he had moments last year where he certainly looked good. You know, following the trade and all that kind of stuff. He was obviously not so good in the first round against Minnesota and showed some of the shortcomings, and a lot of that came back. But like as a guy who would be playing second minute or third minute, third center minutes against second and third centers, he did okay. Like, so I don't have a problem, from a performance standpoint with them bringing him back. It kind of always seemed like that was going to be what happened. Is this question of like, can you improve the guys in front of him maybe a little bit?
Well, it also too, Jaxson Hayes has the same agent as Luka Doncic and DeAndre Ayton. I've talked a lot over the years about how those politics with Clutch has influenced moves with the Lakers. I have no doubt that that we are now in the Bill Duffy business, that there are politics with that as well, in the same way that there are politics with every agency and every team, particularly the powerful ones that happen to represent your most important clients. Like, this stuff happens all the time. And just as a precursor to fans who used to or have still been unhappy with the perceived power dynamic between the Lakers and Clutch, and that is something we're going to talk about in this show, there's going to be some of that with Bill Duffy and his agency and Luka, as long as Luka's on this team.
Yep, there's no question. And, look, in the grand scheme of things, the
politics worked out, I think, pretty well with getting DeAndre Ayton. So
yeah, the level of favor here is pretty mild. Sign our guy. It's not like they asked him, for 3 years or 10 million, or it's like, okay, like this is, they're slotting him into where he ought to be. And again, while I'm not a huge Hayes guy, he showed that he can be a backup center. And what I do like about this is if Ayton misses time, and he has every year basically of his career, you can plug in a player who at least has some overlap in skills. And he's not as good of a rebounder, but like at least the vertical threat part of it, the finishing at the rim, the lob threat, whatever. There are enough things like you kind of want somebody who can do that. The interesting part to me, though, Andy, is like, does this mean the Lakers are done? Technically speaking, this brings the Lakers to 15 players. They, though, could not pick up Shake Milton's team option to drop them back down to 14. So if they
guarantee, it's the same basic thing.
If they wanted to sign another player, if they wanted to use the biannual exception to pull a player in via trade exception, treat it like a trade exception, there is still some wiggle room for them to add a player. But as a few people have pointed out, they have tended to keep that 15th roster spot open. So do you think, really from a free agency standpoint, at least, that they're done?
Well, first of all, I was listening to Anthony Irwin and Jovan Buha talking, I believe, on the Lakers Lounge about the biannual exception money because of where the Lakers are with their payroll right now. And by using a full mid-level exception, they are fully hard capped at the first apron. They can't exceed it. They don't have right now quite the full biannual exception available to them.
But it's not full.
Yeah, it's about 3.5 or 3.4 mil of the 5.1. That would obviously lower, though, if they cut if they cut Shake Milton or didn't guarantee his contract. I suspect Shake in the guarantee date is July 20th. I think they are right now. Shake's place on this roster is being, I think, fluidly, actively determined by, do we need to waive him in order to make room? Do we need to guarantee him in order to make a trade possible? Like if we need $3 million to balance money, something like that. Right now, I think Shake Milton is just sort of a, what do we need him for, more from a cap or roster perspective than an actual player.
Yep.
So that's where some of the, I guess, flexibility that they could have moving forward, I think it's going to come down to, do they need extra money, for example, if Deandre Ayton becomes a real option for them? Can they get them for 3.5, 3.4, and then eventually they waive somebody or whatever? Like, do they need Shake Milton as part of a deal where they bring back fewer players? Like, it's fluid. I haven't heard them really at this point linked to anybody in free agency other than Deandre Ayton.
Other than Milton.
Yeah.
Let's hold that thought, because like we'll talk about that, because let's just say like Milton comes available. That's a pretty easy problem to solve. But then can the Lakers execute trades given some of the other potential restrictions? And obviously, of course, we'll talk LeBron. We'll get to all of it next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Game Time. We have all been there, logged on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. And live music should be about making memories, not the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually go down as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. And if you're wondering what your view is going to look like before you buy, that's where Game Time helps out. The app shows you panoramic seat view, so you know exactly what you're going to be seeing, from where, all of it, what the view is going to be. With Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. There are no hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
So one thing I do think, Andy, that this re-signing seems to indicate is that the Lakers are not confident that they're getting Al Horford. I mean, I think it can be dangerous. Like you said, there is another roster spot that they can open up. There is a reasonable amount of money that they can put towards another free agent. I do think if they thought they could get Al Horford, or really had a good lane for that, they'd have held off on signing Jaxson Hayes, because maybe he's got somewhere to go. But I personally feel like even if you thought you might lose Jackson, tell Bill Duffy, like, hey, can you hold out? We'll hold out as long as you can. We'll bring him back. But if you need to go somewhere else, we get it. But you hold out for Al Horford as long as you can, and just we'll replace Jaxson Hayes if we need to. That's my reading of it.
That makes sense. I think I would like to think that even with the politics again of players, shared agents, all that stuff, that you could say, look, we are trying to build the best team around your superstar best client. Al Horford, with all sincere respect to Jaxson Hayes, helps more along those lines. Like we said, we will save a spot for Jackson, figure it out, but feel free to go to other teams. But this is the thing we need to do.
So the question of like, are they done? And like the Shake thing part of it is like, to me, the one thing that makes it really easy is like, if you can sign Milton and that means you release Shake, that's easy.
Yeah.
And it's no disrespect to Shake Milton, but like, you're plugging in a 2 for a 2 and replacing a 2 that, quite frankly, is not going to play much, with a 2 that would and fills in a really important shortcoming with the roster, namely he instantly, even with Gabe Vincent, Melton would become the best defender that the Lakers have in the back court. That to me seems pretty easy. Like I don't think they're out of it based on my understanding with that. Like, so I'm not freaking out about it. Like they used up this last valuable spot.
No, they have an easily creatable roster spot that they can do with Shake Milton's contract. So again, if they need to sign Deandre Melton immediately, that is an easy thing to remedy. I think the larger problem could theoretically be price point or something like that.
Right.
If, say, there's another team that really wants Melton, he is coming off an ACL injury, either ACL or Achilles, right? I think ACL. So, you know, he was, I believe, coming off veterans minimum-ish or biannual exception-ish type of money. So it's
Melton?
not like he's somebody that would command 8 figures on the open market or anything.
Melton
like
made 10 last year, but he's also coming off an injury.
Right.
So.
Okay. Well, I would think that unless he ends up, and I don't know how many teams actually have the money right now to pay
Correct.
Deandre Melton considerably more than the Lakers could anyway. So yes, I think if they need to get Deandre Melton immediately, it shouldn't be that hard to do.
So we'll see what happens there. And I would say the league could get a little quiet over the weekend. 4th of July weekend, people go to holidays. But of course, Andy, you and I remember it wasn't that long ago when our 4th of July weekend was ruined by the Lakers acquiring Steve Nash. So things can happen over holiday weekends. There's no question about it. How do you read the LeBron stuff? Because, there has been more talk, not just of, we'll see what happens at the end of the year, but that maybe there is a little bit more to this idea that LeBron and Team LeBron are looking for an out sooner, perhaps, than next offseason.
There were some interesting comments from Brian Windhorst. ESPN obviously has covered LeBron in different capacities for a long time, and he was on one of the ESPN shows. I'm not going to read the entirety of his quote because there's a lot, but a part of it was, quote, when the idea of a trade came up, this was when the comments from Rich Paul first came out, I slammed the door on it. First of all, LeBron wants to be a Laker. If he didn't want to be a Laker, he would have opted out. He has no trade clause. Over the last 3 days, I have unlocked the door. I wouldn't say I'm opening the door. I would say I'm unlocking the door. The door that I slammed and locked on Sunday, I'm not 100% sure. And then he went on to describe the Lakers, as he said, quote, essentially viewing LeBron as an expiring contract. And he said, and that may sound like a toss-off statement, but it's not insignificant. LeBron has never been an expiring contract, quite literally never in his 23 years, over 9 contracts over the different teams he's been on. Basically, he's never allowed himself to get to an expiring deal, was Windhorst's point. And I think framing LeBron's contract as just another expiring deal, that's a little much, just in the sense that LeBron is way more complicated to trade than your run-of-the-mill expiring deal. But that being said, though, and this is something Windhorst alluded to, and I believe it was Sam Amick and others have reported, that the Lakers did not broach the idea to LeBron of another 1+1 deal, where LeBron would opt out, sign a new deal with another player option, 50-ish mil a pop. That setup that has just been sort of in perpetuity for LeBron and the Lakers. And I get a sense that in part it was not broached because the Lakers weren't looking to do this, and LeBron didn't agree to it, or didn't ask for it, I should say, because he thought he would get told no. And
so
I think LeBron,
that to me is a really interesting theory about this. Finish what you're saying, but I think that part of it is interesting.
Yes. Also, I agree with Pure Surf Clips. Stop typing. It's too loud.
Okay.
I don't think LeBron, in terms of the power dynamic between him and the Lakers and whatever negotiations might go on between them, whether for the rest of this season, a potential trade, anything like that, it doesn't help his leverage to be perceived as having asked and been turned down. Like, that does not help, I think, his perception that he's built up as, I would say, the most powerful athlete in North American sports. I've said that for many years. I think he is. I think he still is. But in this back and forth, you don't want to be seen as somebody who was turned down. It's interesting. I remember a couple weeks ago when we were doing shows right on the heels of the sale of, the Bus family selling to Mark Walter. One of the things that I said at the time was I thought in this era that with Mark Walter now, Jeannie may be the governor, but everybody knows it's Mark Walter's team moving forward. Like Mark Walter and that group, it's his. And I said that I thought it was more likely from this point forward that the Lakers would not automatically do that setup with LeBron anymore. And the reason they wouldn't do it is not because they necessarily want the relationship with LeBron to end. It's because this setup with a 40-something-year-old player with no endpoint at that price point is not tenable for team building. It's not tenable for roster building. It's not tenable for planning. You can't function that way, especially when you have a generational superstar in his prime.
Right.
And I've been saying this now for a couple of years that this setup doesn't work. But I also never thought that with Jeannie as the ultimate shot caller, she would ever, frankly, have the stomach to say no, or to not proactively keep LeBron for as long as he wanted. Now, the power, just to conclude, because I think this really matters, the power dynamic between LeBron and the Lakers has shifted. And the minute LeBron opted in, the Lakers gained the majority of power in this moving forward. That power dynamic has completely shifted.
I think it's certainly changed. I mean, LeBron has some influence over it, and LeBron gained something, which is easier flexibility for next year. Like, for example, the part about this that I think is fascinating is this notion of the Lakers, like how the relationship here and the idea of LeBron not wanting to make a grand pronouncement of trade, demanding to be traded or something like that. And putting that out there, and like you say, like the market's not as good as can't put something together, like whatever that might be. And there, it's part of what I see as a theme with what's going on here that I will, we can dive into a little bit more next. So we were texting Andy a little bit earlier in the day and, just passing notes back and forth, thoughts about what to talk about for the show. And you had mentioned, this idea of Windhorse and others people reporting, like it wasn't, Rich Paul's group, we didn't ask for a 1-and-1 and it was never offered. It's an easy, clean explanation for everyone. And my thought, the thing that I wondered was, is that true? Because if Team LeBron, who would probably want the leverage, although there is one reason I think that may not be this way that I will explain here in a minute. Team LeBron doesn't necessarily want to give up their leverage. If they went and said, we'd like a 1-and-1, the Lakers, for all the reasons you say no. The one part of this that I think everyone would agree on would be, the Lakers would say it respectfully, I'm sorry,
right?
We just can't. At this point, we need to have the ability to pivot the team as we need to, and all that. What they would do is say, but here's how we're going to present this to the world. You didn't ask, we didn't offer. And there are a lot of good reasons why Team LeBron wouldn't necessarily ask. The biggest one being, LeBron has always wanted two things. He wants to win, and he wants to make sure he's earning 90-ish% of the value that he deserves, particularly since that first contract with the Heat, where he took a little bit less and all that. But since then, for a lot of reasons, he's always said, I need to get paid my value.
More power to him.
I agree. And he also understands that if LeBron agrees not to be paid his value, that trickles down to every player across the league. I don't think it's his primary concern, but I think he's aware.
Okay, sure. I don't want to get in the weeds about
it. It doesn't matter. But I just think I think that plays a role. If he wants to be able to move next year, he's got to give teams a runway to be able to do it. Next year, there will be far more teams across the league that have cap space. If LeBron had opted out this year, nobody could sign him other than to a taxpayer mid-level, that kind of thing. If he opts out next year, teams will have runway to prepare for that.
Sure.
And be able to. So what LeBron doesn't want, I said this earlier in the week, if he wants out, we will find out that he wanted out. If everybody does this the way that they would want to, we'll find out when they announce the trade. There's not going to be I want to leave and I demand to go to these 2 or 3 franchises for the reason that you talked about. Because if those 2 or 3 franchises either can't put together a deal, and Rich Paul knows which ones can and can't, or kind of don't want to, that is a terrible look for LeBron, and one that he was, especially given that he's not he'd be that unhappy here. He just opted in. So I think those dynamics play a lot into what we're seeing.
The truth is LeBron does not have a lot of leverage in this situation with the Lakers over this next year. I mean, that's just flat out true. He really doesn't have, in my opinion, assuming the Lakers are willing to remain strong with the idea of we want to be respectful towards LeBron. We want to treat LeBron right. I would say we're never going to do him dirty, but they can't trade him without his permission anyway. So doing him dirty is essentially impossible in terms of any type of transaction. Sure. But they want to treat LeBron with the stature that he has earned and that he deserves. But all that aside, they really hold all of the cards in wherever this is going to go moving forward.
Right.
Because while LeBron has a no trade clause, he does not have a you must trade me if I ask clause. Like if LeBron wants to be traded, if LeBron wants to be traded, then the answer is okay, we will explore it. And I think that if there is a deal that is, 50-50 in favor of the Lakers and team X, or maybe even like 60-40, like, okay, you can live with that. Mm-hmm. And then you maybe generate some goodwill about the way you helped, one of the all-time icons in sports get to his next destination. And you did that the right way. And it's something the Lakers care about a lot. But they do not owe it in any way to LeBron to undercut their own future moving forward in order to help him. And LeBron can't make them do that. And even with like the idea of LeBron is not going to want to go to a team that has to give up too many players that he wants to play with because it defeats the whole purpose of wanting to go there. Correct. Even LeBron's no trade clause in some ways isn't really a hammer, because if he exercises it, then he's where he doesn't want to be. He's stuck in the same place. And the Lakers get a really good player playing for them regardless, because LeBron is not going to sit out season 23, age 41, because he's not stupid.
And nor is he going to, and I heard Wosny Lambre talking about this with Zach Lowe on the newest episode of Zach's show, and I think he's exactly right. I think we've talked about this a little bit. LeBron isn't one of these guys. Like he's not that miserable here.
He's because Jimmy Butler is what you're getting at.
Correct. And that's actually the example that was used. But like if LeBron really wanted out, they could have figured out how to do that before he picked up the option. And they would have figured out how to organize the option that would get the trade. Everything would have been lined up, and he'd already be gone. If he was that unhappy,
right,
he'd already be gone. And so two things are true. The Lakers are not going to buy him out, because that gets them nothing.
No, that is not.
They're not doing that, nor should they.
No.
And LeBron, to his credit, isn't going to do the Jimmy Butler. He's not going to knock over, coolers and make life so bad. He's never done that. He's always done the passive aggressive, as you like to call it, but he's not been that guy. And he's not going to start being that guy now, particularly at a time when teams aren't going to bend over backwards and gut their rosters because they're getting prime LeBron at age 30, 29, 30, 31. So this is interesting. Like, to me, the part that's most interesting about it is the conclusion.
Yeah.
Does it conclude with LeBron just saying, you know what, I'm done after this year. It's been a great year. He announces in training camp sometime
Done with the NBA or done with the Lakers?
Done with the NBA.
Okay.
Like, it says, in early October, enough time for the NBA to set everything up, make the All-Star game about him and all that kind of stuff. That I'm done. I'm done after this year, which is certainly a possibility. That's possible, or he just picks another team next year, or he just stays one more. The Lakers do this from a year-to-year, 1-year contract. Do you want to stay? Do we have the room? Does it make sense for everybody? Yes, we'd love to keep you. Like, there are a lot of ways, but the conclusion, I think the actual stuff in between here and the conclusion isn't going to be interesting until we see the conclusion, and then everybody goes backwards and does the reporting to find out how we got there. Because I think it's going to be incredibly normal until whenever the conclusion comes.
Well, unless there is some type, by conclusion, if you're including a trade request or something like that, that's obviously not.
My point is, I don't think we'll ever know about the trade request until he's traded. I could be wrong. I think it's
I think it is too complicated to trade LeBron because it's
but
essentially.
Do you agree with me that they would try to keep it?
I think they would. I think they would try. I think it will be too complicated. I also don't think, frankly, it's been LeBron and Clutch's style to do much quietly. In all honesty, like I think it's just too complicated anyway. It is so difficult to try to work out what is essentially a 3-team trade because LeBron comprises his own team. It's the same as like when Kobe demanded a trade in 2007.
I see what you mean. Like, you've got to satisfy him you have to
satisfy him. You have to satisfy Team X. You have to satisfy the Lakers. That is very difficult to do, particularly with a player like LeBron in silence. That's really, really damn hard. I'm skeptical that can be kept that far under wraps. We shall see. If they could, it's a massive credit to all three parties. I just would be surprised if it's possible.
Yeah, we don't know. But also too, the one thing that makes me think of it is that there's a very limited amount of teams that he would even ask to be traded to. I think it's 3. It's Cleveland, it's New York. Enough people have said keep an eye on Dallas that I'd be like, okay, keep an eye on Dallas. But it's not much more than that. So we'll see. But it's just I am. Like, I find the end of people's careers in some ways a lot more interesting, especially, and we've never had an end to a career or a potential end to a career where a guy is still performing in the way that LeBron is. 6th MVP voting, and you're wondering if he's going to retire at the end of the year.
When LeBron opted in, and I said this a lot heading up to the eventual point of LeBron opting in, I wanted LeBron to opt in this season because even if LeBron had left and you clear a certain amount of cap space, and this is before you even knew DFS was going to be gone, I still don't think the Lakers would have had the ability through free agency to replace what you have in LeBron. And in the short term, I think the Lakers would have been worse without LeBron, and I don't want the Lakers to be worse.
Not nearly enough time to replace him.
So I wanted LeBron to opt in, but if I had needed to choose between LeBron opting out and walking and the Lakers being, in my opinion, worse this coming season, or LeBron opting out and the Lakers doing another 1+1 at 50-ish mil a pop, I'd have chosen LeBron walking, even though that sucks because, like I said, and I think the Lakers have recognized this and for whatever reason, I think have come to the conclusion that they need to act on it. This setup is not tenable anymore, or the setup that had been there was not tenable. It is not. Whatever happens now moving forward with the Lakers and LeBron, it's on the Lakers' terms now.
Right. That's critical.
And that was necessary. And it doesn't have to be hostile. It doesn't have to be animosity between LeBron and the Lakers. I don't want that for either side. But the Lakers needed to regain some agency in this, and they did.
They can choose and, more importantly, plan for whether or not they want.
And LeBron can make his own choices from there too.
We want you to come back. Hey, LeBron is finishes 6th again this year in MVP voting, and things look good. Hey, bring him back. Why not? But you want to have that ability to plan. Locked On Lakers, speaking of planning, 4th of July weekend's coming up. People can plan for that. Locked On Lakers on YouTube. So we can go hang out with over 35,000 subscribers to the channel. We, of course, will be back over the weekend if anything important happens. But at worst, we'll be back on Monday. Everyone have a great weekend. Enjoy your 4th. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you at the latest on Monday.